ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us, broadcasting live from Little Rock. The Answer Studios, 101.1 The Answer, which carries the program on their station down here. We're in the middle of our coverage of the 92nd General Assembly, and my good friend Josh Waters is with us. Josh, how are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, Paul. I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. I'm doing well. So let's we got a lot of stuff to get to today. I tell you what, the interesting thing, you and I were in the gallery, and let's see, when I want to get you on that microphone there. You and I were in the gallery and yesterday, and there was an interesting debate over the rules. And so we're gonna talk about that probably later in the program, 7:33. But they did go ahead and pass the House rules for the 92nd General Assembly yesterday. So I thought that was it was certainly the biggest event of the day. So
yeah, I think I mentioned it yesterday. It kind of seemed like syllabus day or syllabus week this week at the Capitol. You know, the first day of college, everyone just kind of goes for a little bit, gets their syllabus, has introductions, and then kind of goes home. So. Bills are being filed. There's a lot more every day, but this week's kind of slow. But yesterday, that was kind of the most substantive part of the day was the rules getting passed.
Yeah, it really was. And let's see here. We have a few stories up here at conduitnews.com. If you want to check them out, folks. Headline here, Arkansas Democrats outline their goals for 2019. We're going to get to that. Also talk more about this incredibly bad timing by the agency, the Highway Department agency, asking, well, they're spending our money. They are sending it to build college buildings while at the same time begging for higher taxes to pay for our roads. Also, generally it is a big transparency victory, the fact that we do have live streaming in the Senate. Gosh, that's pretty fantastic, right?
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, I know you've been covering this a lot longer than I've been seeing it, Paul. And when I came in last session, was like, unless you're physically in the room, and usually there's maybe 20 or 30 people in a Senate committee, those are really the only people who know what's truly going on. And so to have this live streaming, I think, is a true transparency victory. People can watch from home or go back and watch archive footage of what the government is doing in their name here in Little Rock.
Yeah, it really is. Then, of course, up at conduitnews.com, we also have some videos from the interviews we were doing the last couple of days. We got Tim Loggins with the Patriots VEX 746. If you want to check that out, we talked about enhanced carry, what to expect. A lot of Patriots out there watching. Trying to make sure that nothing happens to their gun rights during the session while the legislature is in power. Then we have Marcus Richmond in the interview we did yesterday. That was really good and refreshing to hear him talk about how the process needs to, kind of slow down. We want to make sure we get all of the bills out there, all of the bills filed, because we want everybody to have every opportunity to read and understand what each bill does. And he even said to the point where, we want to get to the point where if you don't understand what you're voting on, that's on you, because you've had, plenty of time, ample opportunity and everything else. So that was really, really good. I can't wait till the 7:33 segment when we're going to play for you this video between just a healthy debate over the rules of the House, whether or not the Speaker of the House should appoint all committee members, which is what he has the power to do now, but that is a new power. And there was some interesting debate. There was one particular freshman, state representative, what's her name, Josh? Gayla
McKenzie.
Yeah, Gayla McKenzie. Gayla Hendren McKenzie.
Yes.
And she, quite honestly, thought it was pretty refreshing for a freshman to just be honest about, the different procedures that she doesn't know about, but she's also at the same time trying to, get in there, elbows out, and represent her constituents on the specific issue of committee, which, the representative that she replaced was Representative Kim Hendren, who was very much opposed to the speaker getting all the power. Matter of fact, he came on this program and lamented about that. So anyway, it was a fascinating day yesterday, just the inside baseball, being up in the gallery watching all of it, and we'll get to more of it here in just a minute. As far as national news goes, let's see, did I see where Nancy Pelosi is calling for the State of the Union address to be delayed? And of course she would, right? Like, of course Nancy Pelosi has got to delay the State of the Union, because there is the optics. First of all, nobody listens to the response of the opposition party. If you get somebody to actually watch President Trump or whoever the president is, if you get them to watch the full State of the Union address, which, is kind of an exercise in focus, most people aren't going to stick around and listen to whoever the next people, whatever the next party has to say. And so in the midst of a government shutdown, they absolutely have to try to delay this, because President Trump in his State of the Union address would have a bully pulpit. I think that's an understatement. And he'd be able to go up there and make his case to the American people about how, he's been at Washington ready to make a deal, ready for border security this entire time. I mean, the Democrats go to Puerto Rico on vacation. I think they realized, oh my goodness, like, this is going to be a disaster for us. So let's try to stop him from speaking. What do you think, Josh?
Well, maybe they just want to stay in Puerto Rico longer or go somewhere else.
That's probably right. They probably do. But there's a lot of hypocrisy here, because from what I understand, Nancy Pelosi wrote President Trump a letter and extended the invitation to President Trump, I think, like 9 days into the shutdown, or 6 days. The shutdown had already happened. The government was already shut down. And then Nancy Pelosi said, hey, you're invited to the House of Representatives to give your State of the Union address. And now that we're 25, 26, is it 27? I don't even know. We're 27 days, and she says, you know what? No, thanks. And then she got rebuked, not only by Homeland Security and the Secret Service, because she said, well, it's really because of security. The government shut down, and we can't secure it's not going to be safe because it requires all of this manpower, all this government manpower. And the Secret Service said, we haven't just been planning the security of the president for the State of the Union for the last 30 days. We planned this, months and months and months in advance. Homeland Security said we are perfectly ready, to have this thing. And surprisingly, the mainstream news media reported this and seemed to be criticizing Pelosi. All across the mainstream media, they said they actually they didn't claim that, Trump's Secret Service or Trump's Homeland Security. They said, that doesn't make it. Most of them seem to not be buying the fact that this is the real reason you don't want the president to speak, for his safety. I mean, come on. Do we really believe that Nancy Pelosi is concerned with the president's safety when the Washington Post and liberals are running these? Did you see the fake headline? There's a lot of people think it was Code Pink, but there was a newspaper being circulated. Somebody printed fake copies of the Washington Post, and they distributed them out, and it said, so the headline essentially, unprecedented, and it said, Trump's hastily departs White House and ends crisis. It was a resignation. It was a fake headline, and there was all these other stories in the Washington Post. Like in this fake Washington Post, there was a fake website that was set up. And a lot of people are, in the Washington Post, of course, says, they had nothing to do with it. But somebody, I don't know, I guess it's a liberal fantasy or something.
It wasn't a Jeff Bezos side project, was it?
No, I don't think so. And I believe he's Jeff Bozo now. That's what Trump said. In his tweet, he called him Jeff Bozo.
Yeah.
So, you're the level of potential I don't know. I guess if the president creates a name for you and tweets about it, you've arrived. But you're also like, it's. I mean, nobody would welcome that. They say there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? They say that, but I think there is. I think now I think if President Trump actually makes up a name for you and tweets it out, then there is such a thing as bad publicity because.
Yeah. Well, those names stick.
They do.
Little Marco, Lion Ted. I mean, that's just what people think of
Lion
now.
Ted drove me crazy.
Yeah.
In the primaries. Oh man, because I was a Rand Paul supporter first, Ted Cruz supporter second, and then, of course, Donald Trump. I was reluctant to support Trump for like a week, and then.
Oh, it took me longer than that, but I came around.
Yeah, it did take you. I remember me and Josh had many conversations about. What the situation was there, but I mean, it was obvious, and I've never been so happy to be so wrong.
Yeah.
About what he was actually going to do. I don't know if Ted Cruz would be able to withstand the scrutiny of a 27-day government shutdown. Like, I don't think he could have. I don't think he would have. But here's President Trump, who is. And all over $5 billion, all over a wall, And I will say this, in the midst of all of this, and we have to go to break here in a minute, but in the midst of all this, I think the one thing that has really sustained the president with, I think, unprecedented media attacks against him are his rallies.
Yeah.
Where he can go back to the people, he can still sell out these arenas, and he can say, this is why I did it. Like, all these people still agree with what I'm doing. All these people still are here to support me. And then the media covers it, and the media is forced to show the rest of the country that this man who supposedly is a Nazi and a KKK, white supremacist, KGB agent, works for the Russians, is loyal to the Saudi Arabian government, whatever they want to say, that, this man still has an incredible amount of support. And so
KBG agents aren't really selling out arenas.
No, they're not. No, they're not. That's a good point. But anyway, hey, go ahead. Feel free to text us today, 870-275-9799, and discover and tell us why you or what you think about Nancy Pelosi uninviting the president or attempting to uninvite the president. We would really like to hear it. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, I want to talk a little bit about this new bill that was filed by Bob Ballinger that, I was talking to a family member last night, and the first thing that he said, he asked about this piece of legislation because it's gotten so much negative media attention already. And it's an attempt to undo the minimum wage increases for certain businesses. Of course, we have talked extensively about how the minimum wage increase is a terrible thing for small business, and it is. It's going to hurt in a big way your small business owners. As in a couple of years, what is it going to be? $15 an hour here in Arkansas? Is that what it's going to go up to?
It'll go up to $11 an hour, but when you compare that to other states, it is more like 15 because of how much people make the median income in Arkansas compared to like a Washington, California. It's going to be one of the highest, if not the highest, in the whole country.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, if you look at income and things like that. Yeah, I forgot. Okay, so it eventually will be like what, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, it's $11 an hour.
Yep.
And it just goes up every year. And this is a trend because essentially what Arkansas is going to, because we have this new law that the people voted for, and you had the old law that essentially did the same thing, which it was like every January it went up 50 cents, just went up. And so we've had several years of minimum wage increases. Every year, January 1st, you got to pay your employees more. And it's becoming ridiculous. It really is. And, the minimum wage in and of itself is just it doesn't help the people that it claims to help. As a matter of fact, it hurts them, but it's an esoteric argument. How do you explain that to somebody who's making minimum wage, who wants to make more money? How do you explain to them that just arbitrarily saying, okay, now your labor, because the government says so, your labor is now worth more than it was. Your prices go up. Everything eventually catches up to you. So anyway, we're going to talk. We'll talk about that at 6:33. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a break. We're going to reset here. This is Conduit News Radio. Check out conduitnews.com for your latest stories, and we'll be back here in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Please welcome back to the program. We've got State Representative Marcus Richmond, Republican Majority Leader in the Arkansas House of Representatives. Marcus, thanks for coming back on, sir.
Oh, my pleasure, Paul. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and your listeners.
Thank you. Yeah,
some of the things that are going on in the state of Arkansas.
I know it is always great to have you on, and of course, you guys have kicked it off right, and the 92nd General Assembly is underway. Let me ask you this: Speaker of the House Matthew Shepard. I said earlier, I think that's one of the best speeches I ever heard, especially the part where he was really just urging members to stay humble. What were your thoughts on his speech?
Well, I agree with you on that. I mean, I listened to it. He didn't preview it or anything like that to anybody that I'm aware of, and it was sincere. It was presented.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Okay, fine, whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me see here. Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. We're broadcasting from Little Rock. We're at the Answer Studios here this morning, and we really, really appreciate you guys being with us. The telephone number, if you want to text us this morning, is 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. We're also back with Josh Wall. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. This hit the headlines yesterday, and it was really, I guess we were in the gallery when this was filed.
Oh, yeah.
You remember this?
Yep.
Okay, so a headline from John Moritz: Senator floats exemptions to wage floor. Critics see bill as an attempt to circumvent the 2018 measure. Well, I mean, that's accurate. And that's exactly what this is. It's Senator Bob Ballinger. A minimum wage increase passed by more than 2/3 of Arkansas voters, the Gazette writes, in November, but would partially be undone by legislation filed Wednesday by Senator Bob Ballinger. Ballinger's proposed legislation, Senate Bill 115, would exempt anyone under the age of 18 from the state's minimum wage, as well as anyone employed at a school, preschool, college, nonprofit organization, or business with fewer than 50 employees. There was several people, there were people in the gallery there. They seemed to think this was some people I talked to seemed to think this was a good idea, or this was a way to kind of manage the damage of what that minimum wage increase was.
Yeah, I think it, is a good measure, especially for small business, because a small business with a handful of employees, or I guess any small business under 50 is what this, law would apply to. They would have an easier time finding and keeping employees rather than slashing hours or slashing them because of the increased cost of labor under the minimum wage hike. So
yeah, it's pretty good. Let's see here. As set out in the initiated act approved by voters in 2018, Arkansas's minimum wage rose to $9.25 an hour on January 1st. That just seems incredible. That seems ridiculous to me. And then it's incrementally going to go up. We talked about this just a second, to $11 in 2021. Employers and workers covered by SB 115 would be exempt from that increase, as well as from the previous $8.50 minimum wage approved by the voters in 2014. Oh, okay. Well, that's something. Only the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour would apply to workers affected by Ballinger's bill. Now, this is going to get a ridiculous amount of bad press.
Yeah.
It's going to be brutal.
Yeah, the headline from Arkansas Times was like, spitting on the people or something like that. And, I guess the same argument could have been said, well, people spit on small business maybe when they passed this. And it's a populist thing. It passed overwhelmingly, so I'm sure it'll be pretty controversial.
Oh, it's going to be ridiculously controversial because listen, if the majority of the people in Arkansas were small business owners, this would have never passed.
Yep.
But you have way more people who are employees than employers. That's why it passed, period. Now, there's absolutely no way you can get around the argument that you're going against the will of the people here. Like, you can't get around that argument. That's going to be said in this entire thing. But the fact is, I mean, if you want my opinion, I don't even think the minimum wage should exist. I mean, that's my opinion. But to communicate that to, a population is really difficult because it doesn't make sense. If you're just looking out for yourself, which that's what most people do. I mean, we have a self-preservation instinct. Then of course, of course you're going to say, yes, I want more money. You don't care that it's the government telling you that you can't sell your services for less than that if you were trying to learn a skill at a lower price so that you can go on to make more. You don't care about any of that. You just want more money. But as far as the businesses go, like in the economy, I mean, there's not going to be any more. That's what people don't understand. Eventually, there are no more jobs if you continue. And how much is enough, liberals? Okay, $11. We got 30 seconds here. $11 is what you want your minimum wage to be. Okay, you think people are entitled to that. You want to arbitrarily set that as the minimum value for somebody's labor or somebody's work. Okay, why not 15? Why not 100?
$1 million.
$1 million. Like, is there
We'll all be millionaires because
exactly,
fiat of the government says so.
Everything's great. Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk more about this here in a minute, folks. Don't go anywhere.
Known Matt for a long time, but I've really got to know him here in the last few months. He's a dedicated individual. He truly wants to make a difference. And as you know, in Little Rock, politics and everything as it is, it's not always easy. The easy is always hard, and the hard is always almost nearly impossible a lot of times. And so, I thought that he really set the proper tone for us trying to move forward and take care of the folks here in the state of Arkansas.
I agree. And, the part, I think the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, they clipped out a portion of a speech, and, it was a good portion, a good quote. But they left out the part right before, which we played on the show the other day, where he talked about how the people have entrusted you guys with the preservation of their liberty. And I thought, wow, I don't know when the last time I've heard that, talking about, hey, we're here to preserve the people's liberties. I felt like that's such a positive message.
It was, and it's absolutely spot on with what we need to do. The danger, again, in a republic such as ours, tyranny never comes. Usually, I will say this: tyranny seldom comes from the point of a gun. It comes from good intentions, and basically, constantly moving towards debt and other problems that you create with. If we'll solve this problem, we can grow some government here and there, and that will solve that problem. And the next thing you know, you've got a bureaucracy and you've got a government that just basically crowds out everything else, including your liberty.
We're talking with State Representative Marcus Richmond. He's from District 21. He's also the Republican majority leader in the Arkansas House of Representatives. So, there's a lot of issues that are, that you guys are going to face. We have taxes. We have roads. I haven't really seen any legislation filed on the tax situation yet. I've seen draft legislation. What are you hearing on the tax situation? When do you think that's going to come up?
Well, I think it's one of the priorities, that the governor wants to push. It needs to come up here pretty quickly. We don't need, to delay that thing because it requires all the legislators to pay attention, to read, to understand exactly what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. I think that we'll see it here, within the next week or maybe 2 weeks at the most, but you can't be certain. There's always, as people go through it and they look at it, somebody, and I don't know for sure, but somebody may have found, that if we do this here, it's going to cause this particular consequence to happen, and they may still be tweaking it at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think so. And what I'm hopeful of, and this is just, I love the fact.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Let's see here. I don't want that to happen. We're broadcasting live from Little Rock on live coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. We did a stab yesterday. Josh, tell us about this. We did a little stab yesterday live from the Capitol on our digital platforms, and then we looked back at it, and it was sideways, right?
Yes, I'm still learning how to live stream from the app
great.
And found a good how-to of what it is. But, that'll be something cool, we're doing this session is, immediately after a committee hearing or whenever the House or Senate goes into recess, stay tuned to the Facebook and turn those notifications on because you'll get an immediate report from Paul Harrell and Conduit News on what the government is doing in your name down here in Little Rock.
Yeah, and all we were talking about is this, what happened with the rule change yesterday, which was pretty, to me it was fascinating. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I really think, and we'll talk about it, let you listen to it a little bit more around 7:30. But I really think what happened was, the process was kind of exposed as being, I don't know, not the most ideal process, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, and I don't even know if it might be the most ideal, but it seemed like, hey, this is something a constituent of mine has asked about. I want to slow this down. I want to ask questions. This seems to be the right time to do it. And I think it was a great example of a legislator hearing from her constituents and trying to do something about what they wanted done and at least make their voice heard, even if it was one legislator. I think there's like 8 that voted against it, so it wasn't a controversial thing, really.
It really wasn't. The House of Representatives overwhelmingly passed the new rules to the 92nd General Assembly, and Speaker Shepard seemed to be extremely receptive to amending those rules later in the session and talk about giving up the power of selecting every committee chairman, right? And he seemed to be receptive to that. However, Democrat Charles Blake brought up, I think, the most valid point of all, which was the House rules that they were voting on yesterday, that they passed yesterday. It only took 51 votes out of 100 to pass them. Later in the session, now that they've passed, if they want to go back and change them, it takes 67 votes. And so Democrat Charles Blake was rightfully pointing out that maybe we should stop this. Like maybe we shouldn't pass the rules now. There wasn't an emergency to pass the rules. It was just precedent that you pass the rules at that time. There was no emergency. If they hadn't have passed the House rules, the House would have continued to operate under the 91st General Assembly rules, and that's fine. Now, let's talk about the filing date, because part of this is the biggest change that they passed, and that may be why they wanted to kind of make sure it gets through. Is in the past there's been a filing date that is set. You can't have a bill past this date. You can't file new pieces of legislation. It's probably a way to quantify or estimate, make sure that they don't go into they don't stay in session forever by debating things. But Josh, you were telling me that one of the main things that it's going to do is something to do with shell bills, right?
Yeah, they ran this in House Rules Committee on Tuesday, and basically the feedback from Dan Vaught, who ran it there in committee, was this was kind of to address shell bills. And I think their statistic was like 23% of all bills are filed, I think, on or the day before the deadline, which previously was the 55th day of the session. And so what a lot of people would see is they'd file what's called a shell bill. And if they listen to you, a lot of people know what that is. But for those who maybe have not heard of that, basically someone come in later with an amendment that basically fills it in. So I think they think maybe this is a way to avoid that process, and people will just file, okay, this is the actual legislation. I guess we'll see, what happens this session.
So what was the old deadline? Do you remember the old deadline?
It was the 55th day of the session. You had to file something. Now appropriation bills, those still have to be filed by the 50th day.
Okay. So the money, how we're going to spend things still the 50th. So what is it now? What's the appropriation deadline, or what's the bill filing deadline now?
There's not one now.
It's just open. Right. It's the Wild West, baby.
Well,
it's the Wild West down there.
If I understand correctly, it's still going to be whatever they said is the last day of session. That's basically say, okay, well, 3 days before that is now the bill filing deadline. So there's still going to be a deadline based on whatever the last day of session is.
Okay.
Rather than this, 55th day, and all these shell bills get filed, and then over the next, 2 or 3 weeks, as you finish out the session, you're trying to track, these shell bills.
Okay, so there is no filing deadline now, and I'm trying to feel so that's going to curb the shell now. So why are shell bills looked at negatively now? I guess. Did you just address that?
Yeah. Well, I think shell bills are looked at negatively because it's kind of a way you've really got to be paying attention, because when something's filed and you see the title on something, it can be a little misleading, but you kind of have a general idea, okay, this is what this bill is going to be about or may be about. When you file a shell bill, you can amend the entire bill to where it's something completely different. And it's just an amendment. And so unless you're really, really tracking it and focusing on it, it's not like when a bill's filed, it's like, it pops up new on the website. You can, track it or not track it. If a shell bill comes out and it's says one thing and then later on it becomes something totally different, well, I maybe didn't track it based on what the first title was. So I think it will definitely help with the amount of shell bills, at least. They might still file some towards the very, very end of the session. But hopefully it will kind of get rid of that practice, and people will actually file what they're intending to run rather than, well, I'll file a shell bill, save its place, and then come back in later, maybe when people aren't paying attention. And I don't even know if that's intentional, but it just happens.
Yeah.
And fill it in with something completely different.
Yeah. So I do think it is that's a good idea. I think if you file a bill, when you file it, it needs to be, everyone needs to know, oh, this is an attempt to do X. I think that's good. I think that's good. I think that helps things. But like anything government, okay, you can have unintended consequences, or you can have maybe people are doing this intentionally. But I'm wondering, okay, so now that there's no deadline, the ability to take a controversial issue or an issue that maybe everyone is anticipating and holding the ball and kind of running at the clock, now you can file it maybe at the last minute. I mean, the last minute being obviously, not the last day of session or anything, but the last minute, the last 2 weeks, the last 3 weeks, something like that, and I just think about tax reform because I feel like that's the biggest issue. And hopefully those bills are going to get filed today or tomorrow. Hopefully we're going to see some tax reform bills filed like now. And I don't know how they're going to do it. There's like a million ways they could do this. They could roll it into all one big package. Mm-hmm. They could whip up the Republicans, whip them up and say, take it or leave it. This is the massive package where we're gonna cut income taxes here. We're gonna raise all these taxes here. Some people, that's one way to do it. Some people think that you could also take it one at a time. Okay, here's the income tax bill. Let's do that. And then you come back and say, okay, here's this tax increase in this, we're going to end this exemption. I don't know what they're going to do, but I do know if we really don't have, if our budget is really tight, which it is, I mean, it is, it's very tight, and you're trying to do tax reform and tax cuts in really just for the sake of saying that, I don't know. There's a lot of motives that we could cast, but I'm just curious. When I heard they were doing this, is it a way to kind of hold the ball, put it all into one big package, put it out there, and then tell your average Republican who's not in leadership, you better not vote against tax reform? Well, what if we amend? There's no room for amendments. We don't have time for amendments. Yeah. We don't have time for amendments. We don't have time for a debate. It's this one big omnibus, if you. I'm just not really an omnibus, but you know what I mean. It's just put it all together.
Yeah.
And then do you have time to analyze it? Do you have time to understand, well, is this a net tax increase? I love income tax reduction. I think we need to lower income taxes, but is it a net tax increase when you take into consider these other, quote, reforms? I don't know. That's just me. I'm just trying to have a healthy skepticism here and try to watch the ball as closely as I can.
No, I think that's a really good point is, okay, with just a week left in the session, if something's filed now, at that point, so much is going to already happen, and that legislation is going to be dependent on what they've already passed, and maybe they're trying to clean up stuff. I mean, we saw with the gun bills last session, they passed it, and like immediately they went and got a shell bill to underbind part of that last session. And so is there going to be,
I remember that.
how is that going to, if they want to do something like that, how will that look now without a filing deadline? Because they won't. I mean, that they can just file it now, I guess, instead of having to find a shell bill to fit it into.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that it definitely it definitely frees up the legislature. I mean, for example, what if some bill gets passed that's that sounds great, everybody votes for it, it passes, and then we find out, oh, wait a second. You're past the 50-day mark. Guess what? Legislator, whoever, can now go file a bill and bring it before committee and get everybody. And now everyone's on record again. I mean, I think there's definitely positives. I just also think, with any, we're basically talking about, taking the rules as they are and manipulating them to your advantage. And in politics, that's unavoidable. It's just what's going to happen. I mean, you look at the way campaign finance is done, right? The rules are the rules, right? So if you want to compete in, you want to try to compete in the political realm, well, this is the way to legally do it, and the only way to do it now at this point is with political action committees.
Yeah.
You think there's going to be some attempt to reform the dark money, the quote dark money? It's only dark money when the other guy's doing it. But they get to define what dark money is, and it's only if you're against the big government agenda. But you think they're going to try to go after how campaigns are funded, Josh?
I think they will, and I think what they're going to do, Paul, is they're going to use this Gilbert Baker indictment to say, hey, they set up all these PACs. It must be a bad thing. And, it's not a bad thing that they set up a PAC. It's a bad thing that they bribed a judge, right? That's the bad action.
Yeah.
It's not that a PAC in and of itself that's created doesn't do anything. It's the bribing of the judge was the bad action. But I think they're going to use that as a way to go out here and silence some of these, PACs that are engaging in the political process. And we haven't seen any bills on that, but I think the governor's foreshadowed that in some of his comments previously that, this idea of affiliated PACs being able to donate to campaigns he doesn't like.
Yeah, here's the thing. Yeah, I mean, affiliated PACs donates to campaigns, but that's the whole. It's not just one side. It's everybody's. Like I said, if you want to compete legally, in the election process, that's what all the PACs that are big government oriented do.
Yeah,
they have affiliated PACs.
Well,
so what does it look? So I don't even know what other system can you go to. I don't know what it could be.
Well, I don't think this. They set up the rules. They change the law and say, okay, businesses can no longer donate. So, okay, well, we have to go set up all these different individual PACs because the caps on, giving are there. And so you have to
Let's flashback here. Let's be clear. That's why this is happening. The reason, the only way to compete in Arkansas politics is with political action committees is because your business you could give individually, your spouse could give individually, and then your business could give individually in both the primary election and a general election. Well, because of convicted felon John Woods, we can't do that anymore. Johnny sweeped the legs out from under small business, meaning all of you out there that have small businesses who are listening, you used to could participate. And, if a successful small business, I mean, we're not talking about, just like gazillionaires, but people who are employing other people and who are taking care of their family, and they are the decider, they are the employer, they are the small business owner. $2,000 is a lot of money. Here's $2,000 for the primary. That's a lot of money, and especially if you're challenging an incumbent. And this is the thing. This is the thing. Small business owners typically are more engaged. They're educated, and they're going to be more likely to back. Not big business, but a small business is going to be more likely to back an opponent of an incumbent. And the incumbent's biggest, whoever's going to challenge an incumbent, your biggest problem is money. And if you're an incumbent, your problem isn't money because the big businesses. You've already met them. They know who you are.
You've carried over $40,000 from us campaign.
Exactly. Yeah. You're already in this. And so for when they cut the legs at a small business and they said you can no longer donate to campaigns, well, the only thing that you can do now, if you're a small business owner, if you want your business to donate, you can donate to a PAC, right? A business can donate to a PAC. Well, what small business owner or what mom and pop shop is going to donate to a political action committee? I mean, that doesn't even sound, especially because it's new. When Walmart and CVS and all these other people, they don't give direct contributions. They give money to a PAC and they let the PAC take care of it because they're big business. So I just wanted to make sure we frame up. That's why we are where we are. And this system is actually fairly new in Arkansas. And now everyone is trying to say, well, maybe this is a bad thing. I mean, if they want to go back to where businesses can support candidates, okay. I mean, let's have that discussion. Why can't that happen?
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of the day, I hope most people would agree with this. Let's have an open, transparent process, which all these PAC filings are public. They're on the website. Anyone can go get them. They can look at who's giving, what campaigns are getting it. Okay, let's have an open and transparent process, but let's let people do what they want with their own money, right?
Right.
And so don't prohibit PACs from giving, or affiliated PACs from giving to the same candidate. Let's have an open, transparent process like we have. Keep it open and let people engage in the political process, and not try to use an example over here of Gilbert Baker in his indictment bribing a judge and try to equate that with, totally.
How's that even related? How is Gilbert Baker or Michael Morton bribing a judge? How is that? How is that connected to a PAC? I don't understand. Wasn't it a cash donation?
Well, they did the money through several PACs because there was a contribution limit.
Okay.
And if they wanted to do that, that's kind of allowed now. But it was in exchange for lowering a judgment on his nursing home. It wasn't a it was a bribe, and this is just the way they carried out the bribe.
Okay.
So let's have it. Oh, and if anything else, now we know exactly how much the bribe was because we have an open and transparent process. We can look at these PAC filings and records and giving, and
that makes sense.
I'm sure that was very helpful to the federal government in getting an indictment. But to try to equate that and use that as an example, we gotta hunker down on PACs and this idea of dark money, which dark money is really more about 501c4s than PACs, because PACs have to disclose all their filings, who's giving, and who they're giving to. So.
Well, I guess my question is, if they really are upset with multiple affiliated PACs, which what everybody is doing these days, then what's the next? What other system is there? I mean, what are they? If they wanted to change that, what are you going to go to? I don't know what you're going to go to.
Well, they know if they can kind of protect themselves and their own PACs or whatever, and just basically don't let anyone else can come in and compete that can maybe match some of, or not even match, but just
make it
10% of what these the monolith of the Little Rock PACs are giving. They want no competition, they want no opposition voice. They just want to use the power of law and government to squash political free speech.
I did notice that John Brummett, liberal columnist John Brummett, he is actually, his take on the Gilbert Baker indictment is that we should appoint judges and not elect judges.
See, that has nothing to do with.
But that's his take. He's like, well, this just proves that we should appoint judges because they're taking bribes in the form of campaign contributions. And it's like, no. I mean, government is just gonna. When will people get it? When will the liberals get it? It's the human heart, and you know what? It doesn't matter what system you have. There's going to be the opportunity for corruption, and there's going to be corruption, and that's why government needs to be as small as it can possibly be. And if you think it's corrupt now in Arkansas, when a judge runs for office and accepts campaign donations, you have seen nothing yet. At least we can see the contributions and deduce and make our own decisions. But when you go to an appointment process, it's all done behind closed doors. You don't really know what favor somebody's done to get that appointment, to get the governor to appoint you to the Supreme Court. Come on.
It's going to be a lot easier to bribe, in whatever appointment type system.
Yes.
And I still have yet to hear hardly anyone, the average citizen jumping up and down saying, we don't want to vote for our own judges. Like, that's not happening.
Right.
And to use anything, the Gilbert Baker indictment or whatever, to try to say, we should appoint judges. Yeah. That's just trying to use something else to get through what you already are saying.
We're talking with Josh Waters from Political Strategies here. We're broadcasting live from The Answer Studios in Little Rock, 101.1 FM The Answer. We really appreciate them hosting us. We appreciate them letting us use their equipment and their microphones. And we're actually streaming back to our headquarters, Conduit News headquarters, and then it's going out to the affiliates. And we've got live video going. If you want to check it out, it's facebook.com/Conduit News. Also up on YouTube and at conduitnews.com. We're going to take a break, reset here, and be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
That you guys are in session now from a legislative standpoint. You know, you guys have more constitutional authority than you have at other times during the year during this session, and so I really would I look forward to, you know, a congenial, vigorous debate where the full 135 member body is allowed to legislate. So, you know, if you do put a piece of legislation out there like tax reform, boy, it sure would be great if we, you know, get some votes on some amendments to try to you know, make it better and actually have the debate. Sometimes I get frustrated, Marcus. I know you know this, because it seems like sometimes we have a predetermined outcome we've already reached before we've even talked about it. And I think it's better to let people, you know, represent their districts.
Yeah, it's and again, in the past, I felt the same frustration. I'm hoping that it's going to be different this time. I know that.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Here we got about 1 minute. We're going to end this hour. Going to be available at conduitnews.com, SoundCloud, and we want to make sure that you get those. If you missed this hour, we're going to be back in a moment with more analysis about what's going on here at the 92nd General Assembly. Also going to mix in some national news as well. And then at 7:33, we are going to get to what happened yesterday on the House floor. Inside baseball stuff, but we've got the audio and video for you, and you definitely need to check it out because it was pretty fascinating stuff. We'll be back from Little Rock here with Mr. Josh Waters of Political Strategies. Don't go anywhere.
Southeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
That's one of the things that we've the speaker, myself, and others in leadership have talked to the executive branch, and we've talked to the Senate as well, is that, let's get this stuff out in front of the legislators as soon as possible. Let's get everybody the ability to read, look, and digest. And if they come to the to the floor and do not know exactly what the specifics are, then it's their fault. It's not because it seemed like it's been rushed through or kept in the dark, and suddenly it pops on the agenda and we've got to vote on it right now. We don't need to do that. And whether that's the way it was, it's the way that a lot of us perceived it to be in the past, and we don't need that to happen.
That's good.
It just makes for difficult legislation, and it makes for unforeseen consequences, and we need to minimize that as much as possible.
Yeah,
this is important. This is important, what we're getting ready to do, and we need to know exactly. And the debate, need to have a rigorous debate within the committee itself that sees this to iron it out even before it gets to the floor.
I really think that's a great attitude, because you don't want to, like you said, it pops up on the agenda and then it's like a manufactured emergency. Like we've got to do something right now. It's like, wait a second, let's give it time. Let's let it marinate, and let's let everybody do their own fact finding. I think that's really, really encouraging. Now, Marcus, I understand that the roads in your district, in your neck of the woods, are not the greatest roads in the state. Would you agree with that?
I heard more about highways than anything else while I was campaigning, and I drive the same roads, and I tell you what really concerns me. We've got a little stretch of highway that runs between Walden, Arkansas, and Danville, Arkansas, and there's been at least 2 incidents, maybe 3, where school buses going across that highway has actually lost their mirrors to other oncoming traffic, such as semi-trucks or whatever else that it might be. Usually at nighttime, carrying a team or something like that. That's just too darn dangerous. And we've got to do something about that. The problem is, what are we going to do? And you have one group that says the only way to solve this is that we've got to increase the tax on consumption somehow. And then you have another group such as myself and several others that are looking, no, let's don't immediately jump to that conclusion. Let's go through the complete process. Let's look at every asset of revenue that we have, including general revenue, and go completely through the process and see what's there, what can be used, whether or not we can move it from here to highways, whether things like car batteries, tires and stuff like that, the sales tax, all that. Can we do that? Can we move that through? And then if the answer is no, because of some great problem that it's going to create somewhere else, at least then I can go back and say to the people, this is why we had to do it this way. And then the other thing, if we're going to do it, if we're going to have to raise taxes on gas, and I may be the only one that thinks this way, but I don't think that's true. But if we're going to do that, let's do it in the legislature. Let's just not pass it out to the people and say, well, we'll let the people decide. Let's go ahead and take responsibility. Let's own it, because it's the physically responsible thing to do. Anytime you pass it to the people to make a decision, you have to do it as a bond issue, and that increased the cost. You're not only generating money, but you're increasing the cost to the people because you got to pay the interest.
Wow. Yeah. And then that would avoid that argument of, well, I'm not for the tax increase. I'm just for letting the people decide. Because that's always a cop-out that is used as like a shield. And it's like, wait a second, that you still support it if you're voting. You know what I mean? I've never bought that. But
yeah, it's true. And here's the thing: if we have to go that route at some point, and basically there's just no way to come up with revenue, at least partial revenue or something else, then let's own it. Let's just go ahead and own it and say this is what we had to do in order to get the highways up into a better situation. I mean, and then let the people decide if it was the right thing or not the next election cycle.
Yeah, when you're actually voting for state reps and state senators. We're talking with State Representative Marcus Richmond. Now, on that, Marcus, there's a story that I have. It was up at.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. This is hour number 2 here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. So glad that you're with us. Associated Press, Alan Fram, headline, "Who blinks first will matter in Trump Democrats wall fight." Who blinks first will matter in Trump Democrats wall fight. Yeah, I mean, President, listen, both sides are essentially like this. Both Donald Trump has got to win. He's got to win this. He's got to get his wall funding. You know, and he could still, you know, any second he could still declare a national emergency. He maintains that he has the right to declare a national emergency. So, you know, I mean, I think we talked about, we had a lot of good feedback yesterday on the anonymous Trump anonymous Trump administration official penning the op-ed. And the Trump official essentially said the government shut down and more things are getting done now than ever because we've gotten rid of the obstructionists. We've gotten rid of the people inside the government that actively work against the president's agenda. You know, if it shrinks or really some of these people, you know, Ronald Reagan was right. The closest things eternal life is a government program on this side of things. I mean, it just never goes away. Their mission expands, their mission creeps, and we have what we have. So whose life is hurting right now because of the government shutdown? Yes, employees' lives. Employees' lives are hurting. I wish we would talk more and connect the two issues of the dead Americans because of illegal immigration, though. I mean, that's really what this is about. Who out there really wants to say that your furloughed job right now? I know it's tough, but at least you're alive. At least you're alive and you're not dead like so many Americans because they've been murdered by illegal immigration because we have an unsecured border. I wish more people would talk about this, you know? Like, you know, you had that activist group that went to Nancy Pelosi's house and trespassed. They trespassed, but they they were made to leave. They wanted to go in her house and make a sandwich. And they were doing this to protest illegal immigration and the fact that Nancy Pelosi is not giving in, and they're anti-border security. You know what it comes down to? You know what this whole wall fight comes down to? And this is liberal fodder. This is fodder for you. And you can tell all of your liberal friends this. Because it's once you get them to admit this, then you've won the argument. Not that it's about winning the argument, but hopefully they'll see this. Do you lock your doors at night? If the answer is yes and you're against the wall, you're a hypocrite. Because if you are locking your doors at night, then we are in agreement. It's just about the severity or 1 degree or another of what kind of security do you want. Okay, if your liberal friend thinks that the wall is immoral and he locks his doors at night, then he's a hypocrite. And that's the bottom line. And, most of these, people that are on the left side, I don't think they've even thought about that. You ask them if they lock their doors, they say, of course, lock the doors. And how stupid are we as a society that they can't make the connection? Well, you help them make the connection. Be nice about it, but help them make the connection. And then you have the other ridiculous argument. Well, a wall doesn't work. Well, does a lock work? Does a lock work? Does it keep criminals? I mean, if no one had locks, hey, I can promise you, their crime would be through the roof. If criminals in this country, in this state, knew that no one locked their doors, can you imagine the level of crime? No. Locking your door and having a door is a deterrent. And the statistics are clear. Where there's a border wall, crossings at that place decline. Duh. There's a big barrier in front of that. They're going to go where there's not the barrier. That means we need more barriers. It's common sense.
Jim Acosta's listening.
Oh, sorry, I had your microphone.
I said I hope Jim Acosta's listening to this.
I doubt he is. He's getting his marching orders though right now for sure, being told what to say. But I for one am just sick of this argument, and I don't buy a minute. Listen. Drudge, I don't know if you guys go to the Drudge Report, but man, his headlines, I know he's just an aggregator or whatever, but the stuff that he puts out there now is just stuff that I don't know, man. It's depressing, and it's he directs to a lot of fake news now, and I know he's an aggregator. That's what he's going to do. It's not necessarily his fault that the Washington Post has gotten worse and worse and worse, But of course, he editorializes the headlines. He'll summarize what the headlines are anyway. But it's kind of depressing. I don't buy any of it. This is good for Trump. You know how many people? It's kind of like the Kavanaugh thing. Give the left all the rope they need to hang themselves. That's what this is. Give the left all the rope they need to hang themselves. With the Kavanaugh situation, there's a ton of people that were, and it might be why the Republicans gained seats in the Senate, quite honestly, was because of what was going on in the Senate and how ridiculous that the Democrats were with Kavanaugh. They look even worse now. We are quickly being reminded how crazy Nancy Pelosi is. We are quickly being reminded. Remember, she was the original crazy. People say Donald Trump, can't stand Donald Trump. Well, we now have 2 years to be reminded of just how bad the Democrats are when it comes to stuff like this. And listen to this. They've never had a president do this to them. They've never had a president that is forcing them to compromise. And it may very well be. I wouldn't be a fan of it, but it may very well be that Trump puts DACA back on the table, which they've rejected once before. If President Trump offers a pathway to citizenship or something like that to DACA, or if President Trump were to, give them legal status in exchange for $5.7 billion and the Democrats say no, I think they will say no. I think, of course, they'll say no. The mainstream media, though, will probably still figure out some way to say that it's Donald Trump's fault. We all know this. Anyway, who blinks first? I don't know. I don't think. Listen, this really is just illustrating that I don't know if we even need the government at the level. Who's the average American? Is your life suffering? Now, there are instances, there are exceptions, but the average person, whose life suffering when the government's in a partial government shutdown? I don't know of anybody. There might be somebody that's waiting in line at a terminal because they've closed the terminal because of the TSA. But the TSA is just security theater anyway. The TSA doesn't really do anything. Not that I can. Oh, I heard somebody make an amazing argument the other day about overstayed visas. The left is now saying some of this. Well, a lot of illegal immigration is because of overstayed visas. Da, da, da. Well, the terrorists that flew the planes in the building on September 11th, they were here on overstayed visas. That happened 18 years ago. Why have we not fixed that then? Right? Why do we have to? It obviously isn't a problem then, right? The Republicans and the Democrats, they obviously didn't want to fix this problem, okay, on overstayed visas or secure border. Somebody at the border last week was saying there was never a war on drugs. There has never been a war on drugs because there's no border fence. How can you have and it was like somebody smacked me in the head. I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. How in the world would we ever legitimately say we're on drugs when we don't secure the border? That's insane. So it's really just been a colossal waste of money, which is what libertarians been saying for a long time. But anyway, it's just crazy, nuts stuff. Going over to Conduit News. I'm sorry, one second. Going over to conduitnews.com. Let's check out this story. It's a repost story of what was up at Conduit for Action yesterday. And we're now with Josh Waters from Political Strategies. Josh, welcome, sir. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Paul. It's good to be here.
Let's see. Where did this go? This headline, love it. Incredibly bad timing by agency demanding higher taxes. Incredibly bad timing by agency demanding higher taxes. Oh, look, it's me. Pop-up video of me. I'm going to get rid of that. And this, of course, Talk Business and Politics. We covered this for you yesterday, but it was more in the first hour. Talk Business and Politics reports the Arkansas Department of Transportation will give $1 million to the Civil Engineering Research and Education Center that's expected to be built at the Arkansas Research and Technology Park in South Fayetteville. The University of Arkansas announced the gift Tuesday, and it will support the creation of a facility that will benefit students, researchers, and companies across Arkansas. Okay, so they're giving money to build a building. Isn't that nice? Number one, let's go over this again. Number one, when did the Department of Transportation go into the business of funding buildings and colleges? That's a good question, right?
Yeah.
Number two, who is in charge of overseeing college funding and determining how much state money is to be provided for college facilities? Is it the Arkansas legislature by appropriation of public funds, or is it a bunch of bureaucrats at the state agency created for highways and roads? I don't think the legislature appropriated this. I think the answer is a bunch of bureaucrats. Bureaucrats. Number three, how is it the Department of Transportation can transfer $1 million of highway money to help fund a college building when at the same time the department is crying the sky is falling if the legislature doesn't pass legislation for a big increase in taxes for highway programs? Director Scott Bennett, we realize that you want to help your alma mater and your engineering program, the one that you graduated from, but your agency has a lot of gall. For an agency that wants to rip more money out of taxpayer hands, its timing is incredibly bad and its actions are incredibly arrogant. By the way, if you want to know more about the legislative process going on in our coverage of the 92nd General Assembly, you need to text the word JOIN to 501-292-2683. It'll subscribe to Conduit for Conduit's legislative alert system. Text the word JOIN to 501-292-2683. We're trying to do everything we can, folks, to give you as much information as we possibly can and give you different avenues to do it. So, Josh, are you hearing anything? I mean, it's a consensus that there's going to be a plan. The governor mentioned it in his State of the State address. We can, he said, find money for our roads. I'm paraphrasing. We can figure out a way to fund our roads. So most people think they're going to come to us and ask for more money.
Well, I've seen nothing or heard nothing of these are the areas we're going to cut spending and prioritize our roads with that money, right? I haven't heard none of that. What we did see out of the tax task force was this idea of the indexing of the fuel tax. Mm-hmm. And so basically what that would do, and Dr. Michael Bustler came on, several weeks ago saying how bad of an idea that was because it would be a guaranteed tax increase on the people every single year. Yeah. So I think that's one option. I think, you've heard a lot about extending the sales tax increase that they had from a few years ago. And you've heard of, bonds maybe. Seems maybe people have turned away from bonds a little bit because certain percentage of that just goes to service the bond, and
it's expensive.
Yeah, it's a lot more expensive, and all the money doesn't go to roads. So
less bang for the buck if you go the bond route.
Yep.
If they pass a bill that indexes the index to inflation, right? Mm-hmm. So, what do they index exactly? Is it the tax itself?
It's the consumer price index, whatever that change is. That's the percentage that they would increase it, I think, or 4%. So it can't go above 4%. But
okay,
CPI is hardly. I don't I have to look historically, but it's not going to be.
So whatever, is this a wholesale tax at the pump?
Yeah, it's the price per gallon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so it's not a wholesale on. So they would index the price per gallon, what we all pay. Okay,
yes.
not the other idea from last session.
Oh no, it wouldn't. That might be an idea too. They're saying they need $400 million, but they really go have to pass a tax increase of like 500 or 600 million, just so the state will get the 400 million because they have to give a certain amount to cities and counties under the formula.
So if they actually do that, and they index it to inflation and it goes up every year, you are now taking away all incentive to be good stewards of our money, because they know they have a guaranteed inflow of revenue or uptick in revenue next year. They know it. So why would they be careful with it? And that is, anytime they already have plenty of incentive to spend our money unwisely, because they always think they can come back to us and get more money. But good grief, if we put it into law that they get more money without even voting on it, I mean, how do we hold them accountable then? Like, and that's really the question here is, if they go and do this, are we going to count? I will say this: when we had Marcus Richmond on yesterday, the best part of the interview to me was that whatever we do, we need to own up to it. So if you actually vote to take more money from the people, you need to be willing to say, this is what I voted to do, and willing to go back to the people home and convince them and face them and tell them why you think you're right. And you know what? I can respect that. I respect that so much, because I'm to the point now where I just want honest government. I think Arkansans just want honest government. Everybody has different ideas or different political persuasions on the spectrum. How far to the right are you? I'm pretty far to the right. But what I cannot tolerate is, and what drives me nuts at this point and is so discouraging, is when you have the spin. Like, I just don't want, I guess if in the end we're paying more in taxes in the end, regardless of what it is, I don't want deception. I don't want Republicans telling me that they did a good thing, that they adhered to the platform. I would so much rather them saying, yeah, unfortunately, we just had to have the money, and I know this is not exactly what's in the platform, for this instance. But look at all this other stuff that I've done that is, and this is just one thing I had to do because whatever. I would appreciate that so much more, an honest answer than how are we going to craft the language to where it sounds like we're all Barry Goldwater when we're not, And that's, to me, that's the biggest hurdle. Like we've been saying for a long time, I've been saying for a long time that with all the corruption and everything else, that we can't even really have these conversations about shrinking government, because we just need to have honest government. I'm to the point where I'd rather have an honest Democrat than a crooked Republican, right? I mean, wouldn't everybody agree to that? Wouldn't you rather have an honest Democrat that tells you he believes in socialism than a crooked Republican? That's and vice versa. I'd rather have an honest Republican than a crooked Democrat. We've got to get back to honest government. And that's why the speech in the Senate was geared towards calling out the corruption, which is good. And I also kind of think that's why Matthew Shepard's speech was so good, talking about preservation of liberty. And we need to understand that we need to be humble and not think that because we're a legislator that we've arrived or we're somebody. And I'm paraphrasing that. But we'll be back in just a moment more with Josh Waters from Political Strategy. Sorry, Josh, I just rambled on there for a little bit. But all of this is tied together, especially when, you look at the highway. This is the big story here. The Department of Transportation giving away $1 million, and then on the other side of their mouth, they're asking for more money from the taxpayer because they say we have to have money for roads. Well, why are you giving away $1 million to build a college building? That's not why we gave you the money. Back in a moment.
If the answer is no, because of some great problem that it's going to create somewhere else, at least then I can go back and say to the people, this is why we had to do it this way. And then the other thing, if we're going to do it, if we're going to have to raise taxes on gas, and I may be the only one that thinks this way, but I don't think that's true. But if we're going to do that, let's do it in the legislature. Let's just not pass it out to the people and say, well, we'll let the people decide. Let's go ahead and take responsibility. Let's own it, because it's the physically responsible thing to do. Anytime you pass it to the people to make a decision, you have to do it as a bond issue, and that increased the cost. You're not only generating money, but you're increasing the cost to the people because you got to pay the interest.
Wow. Yeah. And then that would avoid that argument of, well, I'm not for the tax increase. I'm just for letting the people decide. That would, because that's always a cop-out that is used. Is like. This is ASA News, the Parrot. With breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. I'm Bob Maloney. There are reports circling around from politicians who are in the know, and the same phrase keeps being used. That phrase is new revenue generation. Let's go to our reporter on the ground from the Capitol, Haley Hogwash. Haley?
Thanks, Bob. Yes, it seems the more politicians I talk to, the more I hear the phrase new revenue generation. We're trying to figure out exactly what that means, but you can rest assured it will be good for the people of Arkansas.
Haley, it certainly sounds like something good. I like how the phrase uses the word generation. That makes me think this has got to be doing something positive for our children in the future. Haley?
Yes, Bob, some new developments. I've just been speaking to some people who are here and are not politicians, and they tell me the phrase new revenue generation is actually code for a new tax.
Oh, my. Well, if this is true, Haley, that would add to a growing list of new taxes that have barely made any headlines at all, so it's best not to discuss them here on ASA News, the Parrot.
Yes, Bob, I know it's sure to make government officials angry that their phrasing of the new revenue generation has been changed by the people and called a tax increase.
I would expect an announcement from Mother Government soon to set the record straight. What is the new tax? Revenue generation, Haley?
Well, this new tax, a new revenue generation would add to a growing list. First, there was a revenue generation on movies, books, and songs that people download using the internet. And next, there was the tax increase. I'm sorry, Bob, the new revenue generation on all purchases made using the internet. And now I'm told this new revenue generation is a tax on the people's patience.
I realize the people don't like it, Haley, but specifically, what is the new tax? Revenue generation.
No, Bob, I'm telling you, according to the activists here at the Capitol who have gathered and are listening to some radio broadcast, the revenue generation is literally taxing the patience of the people of Arkansas. I'm told the less patience you have with the government
better not tax our patience.
The more they will tax your patience and the more money you will owe at a later date. I'm also told the collection method on taxing your patients will be decided in a newly formed multicolored ribbon task force.
How taxing.
PHP Parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Hey, one of the more popular issues that we have going on for us right now, as far as the 92nd General Assembly, it's talk about a populist issue. Raising Arkansas teachers' pay. They may see a pay raise. That's according to the governor, and that got probably one of the biggest applause lines in his State of the State address the other day. This headline over at conduitnews.com, Arkansas teachers may see pay raise. It's a proposed bill that would raise the minimum salaries for teachers. The current minimum salary, $31,000. State Representative Bruce Cozart thinks that's too little. The bill proposes the Teacher Salary Enhancement Act, which would increase salaries over a period of time. The money would come from the Education Excellence Trust Fund. If passed, teacher salary enhancement would be implemented in the 2019-2020 academic year. I think the goal is to raise the average teacher salary $4,000. We're going to be right back in just a moment. Going to go over a little inside baseball. What happened yesterday on the House floor of the Arkansas House of Representatives? They passed some new rules. We'll tell you about that next. A shield, and it's like, wait a second, that you still support it if you're voting. You know what I mean? I've never bought that, but
yeah, it's true. And here's the thing: if we have to go that route at some point, and basically there's just no way to come up with revenue, at least partial revenue or something else, then let's own it. Let's just go ahead and own it and say this is what we had to do in order to get the highways up into a better situation. I mean, and then let the people decide if it was the right thing or not the next election cycle.
Yeah, when you're actually voting for state reps and state senators. We're talking with State Representative Marcus Richmond. Now, on that, Marcus, there's a story that I have. It was up at, I think, Conduit for Action this morning. Headline, Incredibly Bad Timing by Agency Demanding Higher Taxes. It references a Talk Business and Politics report that the Arkansas Department of Transportation is giving $1 million to the Civil Engineering Research and Education Center that's expected to be built at the Arkansas Research and Technology Park in South Fayetteville. This was announced by the University of Arkansas as a gift, and it was announced yesterday. And it's kind of got some people thinking, because, the highway department is asking for more money, and they're asking for, potentially, hey, we need more revenue from the people. And yet, since when did the Department of Transportation, why are they in the business, Marcus, of now building college buildings when we need roads?
I can't think of a worse optics than that. I mean, in reality, whether or not I don't know enough about this. This is news to me, so I can't comment too much on it, other than it's poor optics at this particular time, especially that maybe it's something that's absolutely going to increase efficiency at some point somehow, but I don't know. It's just bad timing to do this.
Yeah.
At this particular, hey, we've got so much money, we can give money over here to some other thing that doesn't seem related at all, and it might be a really smart thing to do, but we don't know it as legislators. I haven't. Maybe somebody.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you guys appropriated that money. I don't think you did. I think this was bureaucrats deciding to spend the money, which is kind of, I don't know, counterintuitive. But Marcus Richmond, I know you're real busy. I know you got a lot of stuff to do. But real quick, anything else that's kind of on your radar right now?
Well, I tell you, it's going to be there's going to be the transformation, trying to reduce the size of government. We're hoping that actually I say reduce the size of government. That's my hope, but reduce the number of agencies. That's going to be hard.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. We're going to give you some inside baseball this morning about what happened on the House floor yesterday. Josh, give us a rundown. What did you see from your vantage point?
So basically what happened is the House came together to pass the rule. So how are we going to operate in this chamber this session? And the big rule change was changing the vote deadline, changing the bill filing deadline or removing that. But a lot of the debate actually came back around to appointing committees. So this was the first session that the House Speaker got to appoint all committee assignments. And there are some people who didn't really like that rule. And so they wanted to debate it, maybe change it now. And so this is kind of how that played out. What was the feedback from some of the legislators?
So what you're about to see here is Matthew Shepard. This will be Matthew Shepard, the Speaker of the House, going over the rules, asking for a good vote, asking for affirmative vote. Now, it did, in fact, pass pretty much overwhelmingly, but not without some good debate. And I wanted to bring that debate to you, courtesy of the Arkansas House of Representatives and their streaming service. And so, Joe, whenever you're ready, go ahead and play this for our audience.
apologize if I rose too soon. I have a question. It's a procedural question. I understand, I see that this is part of the morning hour, and as I'm new to this, I believe that means that there's no discussion, and this is non-controversial. I could be wrong, so my question is, will we be allowed to have some discussion for my fellow freshmen, maybe still learning about the rules? And also, I know I had some folks back home that asked me some questions about this. So will we have a moment of discussion before we vote?
We will absolutely have discussion if the membership wishes to.
Young lady here does not exactly know how to do that, so my procedural question is, how do I make a motion for discussion or to move this to,
You don't have to make a motion. All you have to do is direct a question to the speaker with regard to this bill.
I apologize, Mr. Speaker. My question is, may we open this up for discussion or move this to the afternoon session where we could open up for discussion?
Well, I believe that this is an opportunity to ask questions. There can be, the parliamentarian can correct me if I'm wrong, but there can be representatives speak both for and against. With regard, if there are specific proposals for additional changes to be made, those may be filed and can be taken up at a later point in time. I felt it was important, as in past practice, to adopt the rules so that we may move forward under the current rules. Right now we're operating under the rules of the 91st General Assembly, and so I think it's important to go ahead and get these rules adopted. So there can be discussion, and certainly I'm glad to answer any other questions that may be had.
May I address the floor with some comments?
Representative McKenzie, do you have a follow-up question?
My follow-up question is...
You're recognized for a follow-up question.
Sir, my follow-up question is, I've spoken with a number of people. When I spoke to the Bella Vista Kiwanis Club, for instance, one common question I was asked after I was elected was, what committee will you be on? And so I didn't know. And that, then precipitated more questions about the process. And the process, of course, is different than how they're doing it in the past here. And for the freshmen, they may not realize that. And also with regard to the Senate. And so they looked at me point blank and said, we'd like to see some of these things changed. Will you speak up? So I'm here, and I see this in the morning session, and that's why I'm trying to learn how I can best voice my constituents' concerns.
Okay. And that's a very good question, a very good point. There has been some question about the selection process going back over the last 2 years, and what the plan would be at this point is, I know that there are members that may be working on proposed amendments to the committee selection process. That can be taken up, that can be filed and can be taken up at a later time. Since we're already beyond the selection process at this point, that's why I would like to go ahead and adopt the rules as they stand today, and then take up and allow the discussion on the selection process to take place. But to me, that's something that I didn't want to delay the implementation of the rules to take up that debate when we can go ahead and adopt this, have that discussion going through the session, and then if there's the will of the body to make a change, that can be adopted at that point in time.
Follow up?
Recognized for one more.
And this is just one more. And I understand that and I appreciate that we have already selected committees, but with regard to some of the other aspects of the rules that we're adopting right now, I was just hoping to see if we would have an opportunity for discussion for my fellow freshmen and also just to represent the folks back home. Thank you.
What I would say is that we are generally following what's been the past precedent of adopting the rules that have been worked up by leadership and are being proposed, and if there are specific changes, we could take those up at a later date through the rules process, filing a resolution, I believe, taking it up through the Rules Committee, and then if there are changes that need to be made moving forward, those could be brought to the floor. There's a number of proposed changes that vary from committee selection to discussion about other items that may be relatively less significant. But again, my feeling is that this is an opportunity for us to take it up at a later time and go ahead and get the rules adopted today so that we'll have those to operate under.
Representative Blake, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized for a question.
Speaker Shepherd, what is the threshold to pass this resolution?
I believe this is a majority vote.
Follow up.
You're recognized for follow-up.
To amend the rules at a later date, what would be the threshold then?
I believe it's a 2/3 vote.
67 votes.
Okay, so just for clarification, it only takes 51 votes to pass House Resolution 101, 1001. But at a later date, if we want to change the process, for instance, with Representative, I almost call her Hendren, if we want to change the selection process at a later date, it's going to take a higher threshold. It's going to take 67 votes. Right?
That's correct. What I would say to that is the members will recall that the selection process was changed by a vote of, I believe, 70-plus votes. And y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was 70-plus votes in favor. Now, that selection process has been fairly controversial and hotly debated. And so my preference would be, with regard to further changes,
all right,
yes,
let's can we jump in here for a second? We're broadcasting live from Little Rock, so just jump in here for just 1 second. What you just heard there, and I want to get back to what Speaker Shepherd was saying, but what you just heard there was pretty fascinating, where you have Democrat State Representative Blake comes in and says, okay, just so we can be clear, and she is a freshman. Now, that is freshman Gayla Hendren McKenzie, and you can tell she doesn't really know how necessarily to voice her constituents' concerns, but yesterday was a great opportunity to learn for her. And it really, I appreciated the awkwardness of the event. Did you appreciate how awkward it was?
Well, it was honesty.
Yes.
It was, hey, this is a concern for my constituents. What's the proper way to express this? And that's how our government should work.
Exactly. Now, I could tell. I think most people were, very graceful. I think some others. Maybe I just watching some faces, and I think some people are just like, "Oh gosh, she'll learn," But I really appreciate her sentiment here, and I know her. Is her dad Kim Hendren? Mm-hmm. Okay, so he was he was dead set against giving the Speaker of the House all the power to set committees, and so she replaced him in the seat. And so that's kind of.
I guess he's a constituent now. So
yeah, he is.
This is still an important
I've
issue.
heard from constituents. But really interesting stuff here, and it kind of continued. And I really think that Charles Blake raises an interesting point. And to me, I was like, "Ooh, the cat's out of the bag now." Now, it didn't make any difference because the rules passed overwhelmingly when they eventually went to a vote. But it is interesting that if they would have held off on the rules, they could have come back and changed it with a mere 51 vote. And now they got to get 67 if they want to take the power away from the Speaker. And in the Speaker's defense, I think he's receptive to this. Like he even said, he looked at all the procedures to try to undo the rules this last, interim period between sessions so he wouldn't have to do this, But, I'm assuming there was no reasonable way to go ahead and change the rules because they're already set. The one thing about the House of Representatives is they bind future houses. I don't think they should. But, for example, the freshmen have no say who the Speaker of the House is. And that's, again, why. Well, that's why you should keep an incumbent. But you fundamentally, when a freshman gets to the House of Representatives, they didn't get to pick who the Speaker was. That's kind of ridiculous if you think about it. You have an entire, 30,000 people? 30,000 people per district that this person represents. Those people are disenfranchised because they have no say in who the leadership is of their house. And that's fundamentally wrong. But there are representatives that would defend it to the death because I've been in arguments with them about it before, and they just don't care because they want to protect, the process. But anyway, Josh, what were your reaction to some of that?
No, I thought it was good. I think a lot of people were maybe surprised, like, well, these are just the rules. We just vote on it real quickly, no questions asked kind of thing. So I think that shows that there's still somewhat of a concern or animosity from some of the members of, okay, how these committees are selected rather than them choosing. thinking, okay, this is what I think my constituents, or where I think I could be
Mm-hmm.
best serving them on a certain committee,
Yeah.
rather than the speaker selecting all of them. And so
Yeah.
there's still at least a few that expressed yesterday, hey, we want that rule changed. What's the way to go about that? And so
Mhm.
we'll see, I guess, the rest of the session.
All right, let's go ahead and get back to this audio real quick. Speaker Shepard, I want you to hear. I know it's inside baseball, but it's really the only exciting, mildly exciting thing that happened yesterday. Not a lot's going on this week. Take it away, Joe.
A rule change passed by a 51-49 vote and continue to have further discussion. I think that we need to allow the debate to take place, and if there are changes that need to be made, then we can bring them back to the floor. I understand the concern that you've raised about the higher threshold, but again, going back to kind of how these things have been handled in the past, that's part of the system, and I don't mind the debate, but I think that needs to take place once we get the rules adopted at this point.
Representative Ferguson, for what purpose?
A question.
You're recognized for a question.
Maybe this is for the parliamentarian and not for the speaker. It is my understanding that we can't proceed to do business as a House until we've passed House rules. Is that correct?
Thank you, Representative Ferguson. The question is, if we do not pass House Resolution 1001, we cannot proceed to do business. Is that the question?
Is that correct?
No, the House certainly could continue to do business, having previously adopted the rules of the 91st General Assembly as the temporary rules of the 92nd. So they will be in effect until the permanent rules of the 92nd are adopted.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Gates, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized for a question.
Directed to the parliamentarian, I want the rule changed on committee selection. Understanding that, and I have concerns also about the threshold to get an amendment made, could the rules be suspended to go to what vote to suspend the rule to have a 2/3 vote? Could that be suspended by a simple majority?
I do not believe so.
Representative Walker, for what purpose?
Question.
You're recognized for a question.
Mr. Speaker, does it not appear that the central objection is that the last legislature, a group of legislators, set the rules for this group of legislators? And having done so, we have no input into these rules except to the extent that we object to them and then try to prevail upon 2/3 of our colleagues to change them. Isn't that the central objection?
I'm not going to speculate on what the central objection is. From my viewpoint, this is consistent with past practice as long as I've been in the House, both under Democratic and Republican leadership. We have adopted the rules. There have been changes that have been made that have been worked on in advance. And then if there are other changes to be made, the opportunity is to take those through the Rules Committee and then adopt them, just as was the case previously with regard to the committee selection process. And so I'm trying to follow the past precedent. I understand that there may be other thoughts and ideas on things that may need to be changed, and I'm certainly welcome that discussion. But I think it's important for us to go ahead and adopt rules now at this point for the 92nd, and we can have the discussion as we progress through the session. And if there are additional rules that need to be amended, we can make those at that point in time. I'd appreciate a good vote.
Speaker Shepard has explained the resolution. Would anyone like to speak against the resolution? Representative McKenzie, you're recognized to speak against the resolution.
Well, I realize that I'm the rookie up here talking about rules, and that seems foolish. And I agree to some extent. I know that whenever I've hired somebody for a job, sometimes the first thing they want to tell me is how we should do things differently. And I find myself thinking, you learn, then you come back to me. And so I acknowledge that. But even though I'm a rookie with these rules, I'm not a rookie in life. The wrinkles on my face will tell you that. And my philosophy here, and when I want to speak up and voice the concerns of my constituents, as I spoke to those Bella Vistans, and they said to me, it looks to me like a lot of power has gone into one person. And that's not good for anybody, no matter how good that person is. And where's that power coming from? Well, it's not just coming from us individual members, it's coming from my constituents. And I don't think that's right. I represent District 92, and I don't think it's my power to give to the speaker, no matter how decent and wonderful any speaker may be in that capacity. So I'm against this, and I would like to see us stop this. And I think for our fellow freshmen, they're not even a part of this discussion. We weren't here. I'm curious. Why was it we changed originally? I wasn't part of that discussion. I would like to know. I'd like to be able to answer my constituents. With regard to the committee selection until January 14th, finding out what it was, I'll give you I believe this is the first time it's happened. As an incoming freshman, it's hard. It really is hard to land here on Monday afternoon and find out what committee you're on. But with regard to the bigger picture, it's the power. And I think the folks back home want us to be answering to them. And it's not good for anyone to be able to control how different committees are or remove or place somebody around. It's not good for any of us, but it's most importantly not good for the people we represent. So that is why I'm going to be voting against this, not because I have a problem with people here, but because I have a problem with a system that takes power from my constituents and gives it to someone else. Thank you.
Representative McKenzie's left the well. Representative McKenzie has spoken against the bill. Would anyone like to speak for the resolution? Representative Ladyman, you're recognized to speak for the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I totally understand. I was a freshman once too. I understand your concerns. And I understand feeling like the last session voted in something that you were not a part of. I always felt that way about the speaker election. But there are procedures that have been established over many years in this House. We have to be very careful about the changes that we make. And I agree with what you're saying about changing that rule, and I think we will probably debate that. I think it needs to be done at a later time. We have to be very careful. As the speaker said, it took 2/3 vote to make that change.
We
need to be careful when we change.
State Representative Jack Ladyman. He went on to say, he supported the resolution. Anyway, the resolution ended up passing overwhelmingly. It was a very interesting look inside, the inner workings of the Arkansas House. I do expect a rule change. I think there's enough support for it, even if you have to get to the 67 vote threshold, because I think I don't feel comfortable with the speaker having that much power. Josh, you agree with that? You think there's support for it?
I don't know, because last session, it passed overwhelmingly. And I was just kind of surprised. It was, I think, at least 2/3 to give them the power.
It passed overwhelmingly, but they immediately regretted it. They were derided by their colleagues in the Senate. They were like, we can't believe you just gave up your power and seniority more. Well, they didn't call them names, but I mean, I'm paraphrasing. They basically said, you guys really messed up. And the optics were interesting. We got to go to break here in a minute, but the optics of that time were the Democrats had just done a procedural maneuver under the old appointment system. Under the old seniority selection of committee system, and the Democrats ended up controlling the House Revenue and Tax Committee. They had, because they all stuck together and they decided to control one committee, and they did. And that I was outraged by it because I just thought, well, this is a Republican majority, super majority, and you wind up letting the Democrats control the tax committee. There was outrage. So I think some of those members did it because they were told, well, this will fix that problem. And then they're like, oh, wait, there was probably a better way to do this. We could have solved the problem and not given up all of our authority to one person, a kingmaker, essentially. But anyway, we've got to take a break. Josh Waters, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Yeah.
As always.
Good to be here.
All right. We're broadcasting live from Little Rock, the 92nd General Assembly. Back in a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
I think, than what people realize at this point, because all government is excessive except the government that provides me my service. And when you start reaching out and touching this, if there's somebody affected in some district or something, then someone's going to get a call, and the next thing you know, you've got several calls, and there'll be resistance. But I believe it's the right thing to do. I think we need to move that way, and I'm hoping that we can also pass some legislation separately from what is happening with transformation that's going to create the ability to maybe save a little bit more money. That part of this whole process is, you also are going to consolidate, but you're going to look at saving a certain percentage or whatever it might be. We've talked about that with some of the folks in the legislature, and hopefully we can move towards that and see some real cash turn back from the spending that goes on with these agents.
Yeah, that'd be great to find.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, folks. Hey, that's all the time that we have for today. That wraps up this broadcast. We'll be back tomorrow morning, and we'll have bells on. We'll give you some coverage of what happens today. There's not a lot of activity that's supposed to happen today in the House or in the Senate. I mean, they are meeting, but it's really more organizational from what I'm being told, what the calendar says. But we'll have coverage of that, and we'll be back. And by the way, due to technical difficulties, we had some technical difficulties allowing me to hear. I mean, you guys are able to hear me, thankfully. But our interview with Arkansas Right to Life's Rose Mims has been rescheduled for tomorrow morning at 6:05. So be sure to stay tuned for that tomorrow morning. First thing, Arkansas, be safe.